Welcome in, everybody, to another week of XFL Weekly. Week 2 of XFL is behind us. We are now entering week 3 of the beloved XFL 3.0. And it's here. Zach, week 2 in the books. How are you feeling?
Another good week of action. I loved it. I'm looking forward to more games this week. I don't really have too much more to say other than that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, I'm your host, Kyle Krajewski, with co-host Zach Cole. We are XFL Weekly. We're here to chat anything and everything XFL, the happenings, the news, a little bit of fun stuff, just about weekly. Uh, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at XFL_weekly. If you are listening to this in podcast platforms, you can find us on YouTube, XFL Weekly. Or if you're watching us, feel free to look us up on your favorite YouTube or podcast platform if you want to listen to us. XFL Weekly, you can pretty much find us there. You can look for the cool little logo. It's all the same everywhere. So XFL Weekly, wherever you want to find us. Thank you for tuning in. Before we continue, feel free like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment how you're feeling. And if you're listening on Spotify, I'll have a poll asking for your favorite team, just because I like to know what our fan base is thinking.
Shoot,
So
man, we're getting high tech up in here. We got polls going on now. Whew.
I like to test out what's available for us.
It's awesome. It's good to know, good to get a feeler of our fan base too, and who we know is just a pitiful Guardians fan, and who's a banging Roughnecks fan. Like we like to know where everyone's at.
Absolutely, and I think last time, I think the general consensus is that call is the law. A lot of St. Louis fans here,
Okay.
but wanted to get a little bit more emphasis in there. Please let us know your favorite team in the XFL. We're listening, and we want to trash talk them as much as we can, but also highlight them as well. So, without further ado, let's recap some week 2, the happenings that took place this weekend and last Thursday. Speaking of Thursday, I'll kick us off with that Thursday night game between the Battlehawks and the Sea Dragons, and it was another last minute win for St. Louis. St. Louis it was a kind of a slower ish game up until like the final quarter. St. Louis was behind and they claimed a lead with the touchdown. And then Seattle reclaimed that touchdown or reclaimed the lead with their score. And then St. Louis, I mean, AJ McCarron driving down the field with a few rushes himself, set up a game-winning field goal. And another heartbreak for Seattle with one of those last-second crushes, and St. Louis coming around with another last-second victory.
Yeah, it was. I was just gonna say it's amazing that Seattle seems to be the comeback kids, and there's such a
St.
thing
Louis.
in football. I'm sorry, thank you, St. Louis, and
It's the STL. You're just like, oh, Seattle or St.
I'm getting
Louis.
them all screwed up.
Total.
Yeah, thank you. St. Louis has a knack to just come back in these games, and there's kind of a saying in football that winners find a way to win, and I think that we're seeing some carryover from maybe XFL 2.0 into the XFL 3.0. It seems like St. Louis. I have to make sure I have my cities right there. It seems like St. Louis just really has a knack for winning, and they've been exciting to watch. And on the Seattle side, I think they've also equally been pretty fun to watch. Our guy Josh Gordon managed to reel in a 3-point conversion, which was kind of, I don't want to say theatric, but he was kind of all alone and kind of caught it like, oh, where's the defense? It was pretty cool. So it was a fun game. I was definitely into that game.
Something I'd like to point out with this team, at least with Seattle, I guess I'll highlight a player on both teams. Seattle has Jahcour Pearson, who is currently the leading receiving yard receiver for the entirety of the XFL, and I love him. I think he's slowly becoming one of my favorite. I think he is right now my favorite XFL player. He's exciting to see. He constantly has these big plays. He is just reeling in targets and making those catches. He has 22 targets, and nobody else in the XFL has 20. I think the next highest is 16. So he's just a target hog, and he's killing it with it. And then on the St. Louis side, man, props to AJ McCarron. I don't know if you saw the post game interview, but it was spread like crazy.
Yeah,
about how he took he took a pay cut to play for the XFL rather than the NFL because he knows that his 6-year-old son loves to watch him play football. So he wanted to create those memories for his son. And it was really cool to hear that and kind of hear like a different perspective as to why these older players may be playing football. It's not just because they want the shot at the NFL, but it's to create memories. They want to continue playing the game that they love and they've grown up playing. So that was really cool to hear. And it just really, really helps me root for him too. He had a great game in Seattle and the week before, and I think he's going to have a great season.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially with the Seattle receiving core with Pearson and Josh Gordon. I mean, the two of them combined have been spectacular. And I don't even want to rule out Blake Jackson either, who's also managed to reel in 77 yards on the season so far, only through 2 games, which is a pretty decent total. But on the other side for St. Louis too, I just wanted to quick mention Hakeem Butler, who had another pretty solid game. He's now I guess we'll call it tied for the league lead at 2 receiving touchdowns this season. But he seems to be a pretty big target for McCarron, and McCarron likes to throw him the ball. So pretty cool to see.
All right, and then that leaves St. Louis at 2-0, and then Seattle down to 0-2. And I think the consensus with Seattle is they're probably the best 0-2 team. And I think they'll have a few get right games moving forward. I think they have a tough game coming up this week against who do they play? Oh, they've got a bit of a rougher matchup, but not too much against Vegas this week. But I think some get right games are coming their way.
Well, yeah, and that's that's a good. It's a battle of 0-2 teams. That's a good chance for Seattle to kind of prove themselves and maybe separate themselves from that bottom tier.
Yep. So then moving on to this next game, DC Defenders versus the Vegas Vipers, and what looked like it was being played on like a boat in the middle of the like a stormy ocean, because this game was just a rainy mess. But it was XFL football. But quite honestly, it was an ugly game to watch. There was a lot of rain, a lot of bad kicks, both just like field goals and like even on kickoffs. Like things just did not go the way they wanted it to. But DC comes out on top, winning 18-6. And I think two things I took away from this game is Vegas kind of really struggles to score. I mean, I'm currently looking. They are the second lowest scoring team in the XFL, right above Orlando. And then DC they're not having a lot of success throwing the ball. However, they're really killing it in the passing game or in the rushing game. They currently have 3 players in the top 5 in rushing yards on the season for the entirety of the XFL. And that doesn't even include Derek King, the backup quarterback, who now has 2 rushing touchdowns for DC. So DC's game is run it and prevent the other team from scoring, and it's working. That defense is incredible to see. I'd like to see them play. I'm looking forward to seeing them play again this week back in DC against the interesting St. Louis Battlehawks.
That'd be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. But
yeah, that's gonna be
I think you hit the nail on the head, Kyle, with their rushing attack. I mean, until a team figures out a way to slow down their rushing attack, they don't really need to focus on the passing game, especially because they have, like you mentioned, 3 of the top 5 rushers with Kalen Ballage, Abram Smith, and I'm sorry, Raquel Armstead, Abram Smith, and Jordan Teamu. All 3 of which are like you mentioned in the top 5 rushing, and Derek King seems to be their finisher down around the goal line. What's really interesting is obviously he's listed on the roster as a quarterback, but he's only thrown the ball 2 times, and yet he's still managed to rack up a bunch of rushing yards and a couple touchdowns. So that kind of gives you an idea of what they're putting him in the game to do, which is run the read option, tuck the ball, get into the end zone, pick up a couple yards when he has to. So it was interesting to see a rainy game, and it was kind of inevitable once it started that you knew that it was probably going to go the defender's way, just because of how potent that rushing attack is. So it was DC brand football, I would say. That's kind of
For
how I
sure.
would sum it up.
It was. I will say it was a little odd to see a bunch of rain coming down in Vegas. I'm not extremely. I may be a little incompetent with the weather in Vegas, but I kind of assumed it was a desert. So to see so much rain was a bit of a surprise. But you know, good on Vegas for throwing me some surprises.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so moving on to our third game of the weekend. It was between the Brahmas and the Guardians. The Brahmas ended up taking it 30-12. The Brahmas were visiting the Guardians in Orlando. The Guardians, Kyle, are just not a good team at all. They really don't score points. They can't play defense. They have they have a whopping negative 39 point differential on the season so far. If you don't know what that is, it's points allowed minus points scored. So it's not going well. And if I don't know if you saw, Kyle, there was a clip going around on Twitter of DeAndre Francois, who was the quarterback that was actually put in the game late when Paxton Lynch was benched because he's not doing too hot, but he was kind of he was trying to call a play and his teammates were chirping or were talking or something, and he gave him a good old shut the F up in the huddle. So it was entertaining, at least. I'll give him that much. Did you happen to see that?
I did. That was kind of it was funny, but at the same time, it's like, oh, Orlando's kind of struggling here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the way that you would put it. And rushing wise, I mean, I mistakenly mentioned before, but talking about the Brahmas, they also have a very good rusher in Kalen Balaj,
He's
and he kind of
incredible this
powers
year.
the offense. They're a nice balanced attack. They're putting up decent points. That on the season they are actually the second highest scoring team behind only the Roughnecks. So I think the Brahmas at 1-1 are better than kind of the record. I know it's hard to say at 1-1, but they lost that crazy game to the Battlehawks in week 1. So I think that I'll say I think they're closer to a 2-0 team than they are to just a 1-1 team. I like the way that they're playing so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, that point differential for Orlando kind of tells the tale.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interview. I forget if it was post game or if it was mid game. I think it's post game. With Terrell Buckley, kind of keeping it honest and basically saying there's guys on the field that aren't playing, that aren't showing up, aren't putting in that 110% effort. Kind of pushing a little bit of that blame on the players for not making the big plays. Um, and I mean, bold of a coach to kind of come out and say that, but it's a little worrying. Orlando's got to figure out quite a bit, but I mean, season's still young. Maybe they'll turn something around, but San Antonio, the Brahmas they're really good. Continuing to score. You pointed out their second highest scoring team.
Mm-hmm.
And with that rushing attack that Kalen Balaj kind of provides for them, I think they've got something brewing here. I could picture them probably having a few things click for them down the line and having
Mm-hmm.
some solid games moving forward, and they might have some really good potential moving forward.
Definitely agree with that. Definitely agree. All right, and winding into our final game of the weekend, the Renegades visited the Roughnecks for the Battle of Texas, and the Roughnecks came out on top, 23-14 in that game to stay undefeated yet again. The Roughnecks, Kyle, haven't lost a game and I guess if we want to say it, it's been like what 5 years since they lost. We could go even further back than that. It's been like
In
48
XFL
years.
history.
Yeah, so the Roughnecks are just rolling. That's a pretty good way to put it. But things aren't all dark for the Renegades. They had a receiver, Lawan Winningham, who actually was a special team player and an offensive player this week. He managed to reel in 2 fumble recoveries on punt, and he scored a touchdown. His stat line is pretty interesting. I want to say he's got like 4 targets and 4 catches of 1 touchdown. Like that's in
Yep.
his 2 games, So so he's hyper efficient. But I think the real storyline here is that the Roughnecks are just they're really, really good. They play great defense. They play great offense. They have the most points scored this season. They have the second least points allowed this season. So that makes for one of the highest differentials, positive differentials, I should say. Guardians have the highest differential, and it's not the good way. But yeah, so they're killing it. I mean, behind Brandon Silvers just kind of controls the game for them offensively. We mentioned last week that their defensive players are just balling out. They have a bunch of sacks every single game. It's going really well for the Roughnecks, and I would say that they're the cream of the crop right now. They're number one when it comes to XFL.
Yeah, I think you and I had this discussion before we jumped in. Is that there's a clear number one in the power ranks, and that's the Roughnecks, while there's a
Mhm.
clear number 8, and that's the poor Guardians. Uh, but the Roughnecks just continue to dominate. I mean, I wouldn't say a 9-point win is a domination, but I think they kind of won this game and knew they were going to win this game, and I think they'll continue to.
Well,
But then
Kyle. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think I don't think 9 points is anything to turn your nose up at. I mean, everything that we've seen in the XFL so far, with the exceptions of team playing the Guardians, has been really close. It's been 3, 4, 5 points. So like nine's a pretty good margin of
and
victory.
nine is also a score.
It is. You're right. It's a one possession game. You're right.
Uh, but either way, a 9-point win is a 9-point win. And the Roughnecks, I think, continue to be a dominant squad. And I think they'll continue to be. But then the Renegades, I mean, you mentioned it, Winningham, that line is not something you see every day
No,
for a receiver to have 2 fumble recoveries and a receiving touchdown. Uh, that's impressive. I'd love to see more of that, but that's just the beauty of the XFL, and that might just be an extreme outlier. But either way, love the complete difference there is in what players can do in this league. Um,
definitely.
and it's also interesting. So yeah, like you mentioned, the Roughnecks kind of being the top squad, but the Renegades have the least total yards in the season of all teams, which is interesting because I feel like they're not performing too poorly. I think they're just incredibly efficient in what they do on the offensive side of the ball,
Hmm.
and maybe it'll work for them down the line. But I think Wade Phillips in this squad with the Roughnecks, just kind of they've got something brewing.
Kyle, let me ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot quick.
Oh boy.
We're gonna take the 2-0 teams out of it, and we're gonna take the 2 of the 0-2 teams out of it. All right. So I'm gonna say that the Roughnecks, the Defenders, and the Battlehawks, who are all 2-0, we'll put them in the top tier. We'll put the Vipers and the Guardians in the bottom tier. I want you to tell me, out of the Brahmas, the Renegades, and the Sea Dragons, what order do you put them in? What teams do you think are the best out of those three?
I think the Brahmins are the clear number one there for me.
Okay.
I think they just kind of had a rough loss last week, but I think they're definitely. I think as the season moves on, they're going to move into that upper tier, or at least kind of be grouped into like either like a second tier that's not this middle tier.
Okay.
Um, and then I'd probably go Seattle. I think the Sea Dragons have just lost kind of 2 heartbreakers back to back. It's not to say they definitely need to work on their ball security. I think that's a huge kind of detriment for them. But I think that's something that they can figure out. And this offense is just uh, a really like they're probably the best passing offense in this league, with Roughnecks being right behind them. And I think that's a lot for a football team to have. So I'd put them kind of second in this group of 3, and then Renegades right behind them.
Okay.
So I'd go Brahmas, Sea Dragons, and then Renegades.
I think I'm right there with you in the same order. I mean, the Sea Dragons are a lot better than their 0-2 record says. I think. I mean, they've lost by a combined 6 points. Like it's just, and they've played two now 2-0 teams. So it's. I think they've just had a tough early schedule, and I think they'll bounce back and be just fine.
For sure. For sure. All right. So that was week 2. Beautiful week once again. Thank you, XFL. And now we will jump. Now we'll jump into the week 3 preview. I'll highlight the schedule, kind of which games are coming up this week, and then Zach and I will kind of go through each game and make our individual picks at the spread and over under. And then sometimes Zach will weasel out and pick a money line or neither. So the week 3 schedule looks like this. There is one Saturday game between the Sea Dragons and the Vipers at 7 p.m. Eastern. Spread set at -3 in the Sea Dragons' favor. Over under is at 38. And then on Sunday we get 3 lovely games. Probably I'd say this is my game of the week. But I think there's a runner up here. St. Louis Battlehawks versus the DC Defenders in DC. Defenders have a -2 spread in their favor. Over under set at 37. And then at 4 p.m., we've got the Guardians versus the Renegades. Renegades have a heavy favored line there. -9 in their favor. Over under set at 37. And then the Brahmas versus the Roughnecks clean us out or wrap up the weekend with Sunday Night Football with the -4.5 spread in the Roughnecks' favor. Over under set at 37. So 3 games on Sunday. And man, oh man, do I love nighttime football. We get 2 of them this weekend. I'll miss Thursday night football, but I'll live.
Yeah, Saturday Night Football is a close second though, especially in March, because we will be in March come Saturday. So let's talk about this first game here, Kyle. The Sea Dragons at the Vipers. We have, I guess, 2 0-2 teams going at it here. Someone's got to win, definitely. Right off the bat, I'm taking a look at the line here, the spread, and it's at 3 points in the Sea Dragons' favor. And I think I like that. I think that's what I'm going to go with personally. I think I'm going to go with the Sea Dragons -3, and the over/under is kind of where I am stumped right now. Just taking a look at kind of their past weeks here. The Vipers put up 6 against the Defenders this week, and 20 against the Renegades the week prior. And the Sea Dragons score points. They put up 18 and they put up 18 back-to-back. So they're a safe bet for 18. I'm going to take the under, I think. I'm going to go under 38 on this game. Again, I'll go Sea Dragons -3, and for the over-under, I will take the under on 38 points.
I think I'm with you. Give me Sea Dragons -3. But I think I'm going to take the over.
Okay.
I'm expecting potentially. Oh, you know what? I think I've seen bad weather reports again in Vegas. So I'm switching gears there. Give me the under. Under
that
38.
Vegas rain. You got to watch out for it.
So we're both taking our lines there are the same. -3 in Dragons' favor and under 38.
And for the Kyle Krajewski stamped game of the week this week, the Defenders and the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks visit the Defenders. 2 powerhouse teams. Obviously, the Battlehawks always seem to find a way to win. The Defenders have just been pretty solid across the board. Oh, what are we thinking here? Spread is at 2 in the Defenders' favor. You know what, Kyle? I'm gonna break your heart, and we're gonna go for the first split here. I think.
Do it.
I'm gonna take the Battlehawks +2. I think the Battlehawks are stingy. I think they find a way to win this game, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take the over in this game, over 37.
Yeah, that over is juicy. I'm
is.
just gonna say right now that I'm hitting the over with you. Over 37, and I feel like I'm at a point where I don't even have to say it. But give me DC -2. I think this is their game. I think that run game is gonna take control. They're gonna put that defense is gonna put AJ McCarron in his place, which is a good place. He's a good quarterback. But I think they're going to control the game and have at least that 2-point win differential. So give me DC -2.
All right. Okay, 4:00 game. The Guardians are visiting the Renegades. Let me make sure I have that right.
Yeah.
The Guardians are visiting the Renegades. Okay. The Guardians are just bad, man. There's no real way to cut it. And the line is set at 9, which is very, very high. Obviously, it is in the Renegades' favor. But, Kyle, I'm going with the Renegades. I'm going -9. No one has that the Guardians have just not come close to anyone. They lost by 18 in week 2. In week 1, they lost by 21. Like I'm no mathematician, but that is not close to 9. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take the Renegades -9. I think that's pretty safe.
What about your over under,
Oh
punk?
shoot, I'm all fired up. I feel so good. I feel so good picking the spread, the minus on a 9-point spread.
You're like,
Sorry.
I know these Guardians are going to be demolished. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Shoot. Okay. Um, Over under. Let me see. I'm trying to do some mental math here on this one. The Renegades 22 points. I'm going to go ahead and call me crazy. I'm going to take the over on this game, mostly because I think that the Renegades are going to put up some points, and I think they're kind of just going to carry that over. I'm going to go ahead and say, like, I don't know, something like 20. I don't even know. I don't know. I don't want to guess. I'll overthink it, and then I'll end up changing my pick. So no, I'm just going to go. So go ahead. You're up.
As much as I want to give the Guardians a little slack on this 9-point line,
They suck.
it's not easy. So I'm with you. Give me Arlington -9, which is kind of hard, and I kind of really hope the Guardians prove us wrong. I'd love to see a great football game, but they're not
Don't
showing
you
it.
just feel gross taking a 9-point line?
This early in a season for just a young football league is hard, but with I don't think the Guardians have showed me anything to help pick anything other than that.
No.
But I'm gonna take the under.
Ooh, okay.
I think I hate to say it, but I feel like uh, Orlando kind of goes out there, puts up 6 points, and then Arlington wins by with 20 points. I don't know.
Okay.
Give me something very small, but it's kind of weird picking the -9 spread with the under being at 37. But
So
I don't
you're
know.
you're kind of more so betting on the Guardians not doing their part to reach that over under line.
Bingo. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see the Guardians doing a lot. I think they're still. I think they're spending this week pretty much figuring out their quarterback situation because they've got a lot to figure out there, and I think that's going to kind of hinder what they kind of move forward with doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, give me -9 in Arlington's favor and the under.
Okay. All right. Okay, so for the last game of the week, we have the Brahmas, who are visiting the Roughnecks. This is this will be the game that I think I'm super into this weekend.
Yeah, this is my secondary game
I
of the
think
week.
this is a measuring stick game for the Brahmas to see, like, are we really real, or are we faking it till we make it here? So for me, I personally do think that they are for real, and I think that they're going to keep the game close, especially 4.5 points close. You know, we talk about the 1 point conversion, 2 point conversion, 3 point conversion. A lot of these games that we've seen have been decided by 3 or 4 points, coincidentally. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Brahmas plus 4.5 is going to be my spread pick. And the over under is at 37. This is where I always get thrown for a loop, man. The over under at 37. Let's see. 23. They play the Guardians though. 15. I'm gonna go over. Listen, the Roughnecks are a powerhouse. They put up points, and I think it's gonna have to be a shootout, even if it winds up being somewhere around the 20 to 20 range. You know, obviously, if I think it's gonna stay close and the Brahmas spread is gonna hit, then it's got to stay close-ish. So we'll say 20-20. That puts it at 40 points. Give me the over.
Ooh, I think I'm with you. I think I'm going to take the same picks. Give me Brahmas plus 4.5. I think it's going to be a close one. I think you said it perfectly, that this is the game that the Brahmas kind of show who they really are this season.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think they can, especially against the Roughnecks. And the Roughnecks are incredible. But I think that 4 point, I think it's going to come within that like field goal to win it kind of thing. It most likely in the Roughnecks' favor, but I wouldn't be incredibly surprised if the Brahmas came out and put a stamp in their win column.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, and then I'm also taking the over. I think this is the game that Kalen Balaj finally gets into the end zone in the ground game. But I also think the Roughnecks passing attack is right there, right behind Seattle. I think I think Silvers has something cooking here, and he'll put together a few touchdowns. And yeah, give me the over. I think this will hit that 40-point territory, like you mentioned as well.
Kyle, two things I just wanted to mention. First, I didn't talk about him when we did our recap, but how about I don't want to get his first name wrong here. Borgie, Max Borgie for the Roughnecks.
Ooh.
He's pretty cool.
I like
They're
him.
calling him Christian McCaffrey 2.0. He's a cool little player. I like that.
He's fun to watch. I like watching him too. And if it weren't for the DC three-headed monster, he'd be right there in the top 5 for rushing.
Yes, he would.
But he's got 2 rushing touchdowns, which only matches DC's Derek King.
Yeah,
he's fun. He's really cool to watch, and I think he's kind of like a little bit of an X factor for Houston here.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. But the other thing, unrelated, we're going to jump to the Brahma side real quick. I was just kind of taking a look at their schedule, seeing if maybe seeing just what their upcoming games were, and looking. They play the Renegades back to back in week 5 and week 6. I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's very interesting.
Obviously, it's a home and away, but just kind of weird. Kind of weird.
That's exciting. I'm actually surprised. We might have touched on that in our schedule game and probably just slipped past in our schedule video, and that just kind of slipped past our brains. But interesting. That'll be
Definitely
very interesting to see how game plans adjust in just a week.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, before we head out, I do want to still brag. Zach and I, our picks tied last week. We both went 5-3, but I'm still in the lead. I've got 2 more picks right than you do. So if you're listening to anybody's picks, you're more likely to win if you make my picks. But either way, if you also like making picks, join our XFL Pick'Em League. I'll have all the information in the description, whether you're watching or listening. Where XFL basically has their own Pick'Em League, free to enter, and you basically wager. They're like football points. I think they're just footballs. The icon is a football, and you basically wager how likely something's going to be to happen. And it's not like a pick a winner, pick a loser, pick an over under. They're very, I guess, specific. So like the example for pick 1 this week, Seattle Sea Dragons QB Ben DiNucci leads the XFL with 478 passing yards. Will DiNucci throw for over or under 225.5 yards against the Vipers? And you basically pick an over-under and you wager 300 footballs. And if it wins, you get that amount. If you lose, you lose it. But we have a league, an XFL weekly league. There's currently 10 of us in there. Jump in, dominate us. Feel free. We had a dude. I want to call him out. I forget his name. I have
Thomas.
It right here.
Our man Thomas.
Thomas came in with a huge week last week. And man, Thomas L02, huge week 2 in our Pick'em League. And hopefully somebody else comes in and takes his mantle as the top dog. But feel free to join. There's a code. It's a weird code. I'd say it out loud, but it's like a bunch of numbers and letters that I'd just be speaking mumbo jumbo to you. So I'll have that information in the description with the link and the code and all that fun stuff. Please join. It's really cool. You're not winning anything. You're not losing anything. And maybe we'll have a competition one of these weeks where it's like best pick 'em score. Maybe we'll reach out or figure something out to I don't know, We'll figure something
Yeah,
out. Maybe
dude,
maybe a
yes.
hat from the XFL shop or something cool. But that's
Definitely,
down the
yeah.
line. We haven't even discussed that yet. But we'll probably throw something fun together. Because I think that'll be really cool.
Kyle,
So
all I want to say before we go is Uncle Squirrely, I'm coming for you. Yeah, you jumped me in the standings this week. I gotta chase him down in the pick 'em pool. Got my sights set on Squirrely. What can I say?
yeah, watch out, Uncle Squirrely. Your nephew Zach Cole is coming for you. Either way, thank you for tuning in. We are XFL Weekly. I am one host, Kyle Krajewski, with host two, Zach Cole. Thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all the really cool, fun stuff. Comment and poll your favorite XFL team. Would love to hear what hear who you are rooting for and potentially why. Maybe you hate the Guardians. Maybe you hate the Guardians. Let us know. We're actually really interested. That's not a joke. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. And Zach and I will chat with you next week.
See you guys.
See ya.